Okay. Hi everyone. My three near and dear friends who have joined. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Christian Badach. I'm a second year in the photography program here at the Yale School of Art, and today I have the absolute privilege of introducing painter, musician, poet, novelist, photographer, and filmmaker Billy Childish. So, in preparation for this conversation, I've kind of been asking myself, how does an interviewer and a rather inexperienced one at that even begin to ask questions to someone like Billy? What would be considered prying or interesting to a man who has painted some 2,500 paintings, written 40 collections of poetry, three novels, and released more than 100 full-length LPs, one of them being the first truly independent punk albums of all time. Though part of me feels that these accolades and staggering numbers probably mean very little to Billy, and by no means define what I believe is the crux of his work. This crux, which I am alluding to, is something that took an absolutely profound effect on me when I was 19 years old and I heard his song Length of Pipe playing at a local dive bar in Rochester, New York. After asking the bartender, what song was that? A world of undeniably honest, confessional, and raw work that was riddled with just both extreme descriptions of love and stab and twist pain was open to me. In his expansive practice, which defies all notions of the interdisciplinary, Billy stands for what I now feel is an unbelievably rare beacon of authenticity in the art world. Regardless of medium, Billy is constantly contending with subjects and themes that are distinctly connected to the unfiltered human experience and universal truths. And through these means, Billy has created a highly distinctive world and cosmos around himself. And it is in this galaxy where paintings of wild streams are a potable chemical concoction of the vitalistic that the audience must drink. The three chords, which are the backbones of all of his various bands' permutations, is emblematic of a constantly pulsing heart, and confessional lines of poetry are subverted into a mirror for our own deepest inadequacies and desires. Billy, welcome, and thank you so much.
That's a very fulsome introduction. Thank you. We'll have to get you to write something for the next book.
And I didn't really provide a concrete biography at all, but I just kind of maybe wanted to start at the beginning, at your place of birth and one of your primary sites of influence, Chatham, Kent. You grew up there with your mother, your father, and your brother. You left secondary school when you were 16 and then went on to work as an apprentice to a stonemason at the Royal Dockyards in 1976. And a little bit after that, that area was completely ravaged and shut down by Thatcher in 1984. And even in the last 10 years or so, your favorite barbershop, even closed down. So I'm curious about what has sort of kept you in the area and how your your family's history there, your history, and what I kind of read as just a profound sense of local pride has continued to influence your work for so long.
Well, it's obviously going to be my answer is going to probably sink some of those ideas, or maybe not be totally in accord. Now, let me think. Well, if we go back to we both if we go back to being born in Chatham. I was born outside of Chatham in Walderslade, which is about 3 miles outside, which was used to be in the sticks. Um, my Both my sets of grandparents did work in the dockyard at different times. My great grandfather was came round from Wales on my mother's side, was a shipwright from Pembroke. My father's grandfather was a able seaman in the Royal Navy, and he ended up being based at Chatham and later worked in the dockyard. So they're the sort of connections that we have here. But as far as my own work goes, I mean, I went into the dockyard at 16 because wasn't allowed to enter art school because I lacked qualifications. I subsequently did a lot of drawings and was very keen on escaping work. And I subsequently was attended art schools on 4 or 5 different occasions. Um, Ultimately, like I was one time on probation, one time left, another time expelled. So I never completed uh, my art education. The last time I was at St Martin's was in 1980, when I was there, and my contemporaries there, the one person I was friends with was Pete Doig, who was interested in similar music and painters as myself, and we remained friends. And that was one of the uh, one of the reasons that I gained some traction in the art world because I annoyed more people than I pleased at art school and subsequently. Because the interesting thing in my biography, I would think, is that although um, probably thankfully you underestimated the albums we've released and underestimated the paintings um, by a great degree, which is what the galleries prefer,
Mm.
because no one wants more paintings. We should have less. Um, so we were to 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 take that work um, forward. The odd thing in my biography is that we never signed to record labels, never signed to galleries, and never signed to publishers. So by meeting people who were early on in my life who were interested in what I did, who later became into positions of slightly more prominence, I got some lucky breaks like 30 years down the line, although I pissed off a lot of people along the way. And I accepted that I wouldn't be allowed into the art world, and I wouldn't be allowed into that hallowed world. And the same with the music and the writing. And actually, as far as the music and writing is concerned, I'm still not a member. And actually, even as far as painting is concerned, in England, probably not really still quite considered a member. I'm not collected by any of the museums in England, and I'm considered still considered a bit of a leper as far as they're concerned, because the if you said multidisciplinary, like in Germany and in Europe, the fact that I work in several different areas isn't a problem, but the English really do not like someone who isn't really firmly in one camp.
Mm.
And this is what's caused a lot of problems because if I'm hanging out with art people, I don't really identify as one of them.
Mm.
And the same goes with the music and the writing. Whereas really we're meant to be a bit of a tribe
Mm.
and blow smoke up each other's asses. And I'm not really that great at doing that.
Mm.
And I'm um, more likely to offend than please. So I say that my networking is not turning up. At the weekend, there was a local, my London gallery had an exhibition of prints. They do these Carl Freeman Gallery do these very beautiful screen print editions of prints. And they had quite a retrospective of the last 20 years or so of the printmaking. They've got a very advanced, very clever bunch of guys working on in their print works. And myself and my wife and my 2 kids, we were going around the exhibition, and we stopped in front of one of the prints of which was one of my works, and I said, "What is this old shit?" And Julie said, "I don't know, some wanker did it." And of course, the people standing around were sort of very miffed and disgusted at our denouncing this work. And when they left, I passed one of them later on, and the man gave me a very, very nasty um, look because, you know, we weren't disparaging anyone else's work. We were just mocking my work. But of course, that's not, we were talking about my picture because we thought it was funny. We weren't actually doing it for his amusement. We were doing it for ours. But, you can see how, um, how fragile egos are around what people loosely term as creativity. Because if you have this very strong identity as a painter or as a musician or as a writer, it's best not to talk to me
Mm.
because because I take people as I find them. I'm not, if we go places, we go to a fancy restaurant, I'm probably going to get on with the waiter better than the other guests.
Sure.
So it's got that sort of feeling because we're sort of like we're not really we're not really card holding fascists, I would say, as far as art,
Sure.
m- music, and writing goes. It's it can get very cliquey and very. The main point is it's very very boring,
Mm.
sort of like hanging around with a load of people who agree with how important they are and how important we are as a group. Whereas really, you just got to pinch yourself really and sort of say, well, how did we get this lucky to get away with this? And I tell you, in my opinion, most of them are getting away with it. They're not, they might complain that their work isn't selling for enough, but they should be pinching themselves, wondering how they sell it at all.
Sure. And I guess maybe kind of continuing with, what, many of us sort of know as your the sort of fierce independence, I guess you could say, and kind of maybe reaching out of Chatham a little bit to this sort of larger scene of.
Well, yeah, on that point, sorry to interrupt you,
No.
but that larger scene, where you're going with that, you see, I'm not really fiercely independent. It's just I'm very uncomfortable having anyone having control of me. So it's psychological. So really, it's no effort. And as far as did want to touch on that about the local scene or what we do, and everything is every the work is sort of like comes from the environment I live in and the sort of like uh, type of idiot that I am. That's where the work comes from. But the thing is, I've never ever made anything for the local scene. So what happens is like you know that's why we're so easily actually we were much preferred like in Seattle or in Hamburg or in Berlin because when we were doing this stuff initially, nobody wanted to identify with the locality that we're from. And probably the only reason we did it a bit was in a vague sort of idea of really this place is no less important than anywhere else, but not that it's sort of like great or fantastic, or we're going to sort of like um, it might, this is my shit, but it smells good to me type attitude.
Yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't like we don't sort of I mean, the place we come from and the things that have got this is an old military town. It's a dockyard and military area. And it's a beautiful, beautiful landscape that's been decimated really by the by suburbia. And the energy of the place is very, really weird because of the Royal Marines, uh, the Gurkhas, the Royal Navy, the Royal Engineers. It was so we're in Kent, not far from London, but this was there were never merchants here. It was always military, and the energy of the place is sort of like a little bit dark and unpleasant in a way, quite real and visceral compared to the rest of Kent because Kent is called the Garden of England, and I always said that we were in the sort of the rusty garden shed or whatever, the something. And really, it's just the reason I stayed and we were here was because it's expensive to live in London, and we can get to London in 40 minutes, so why go to London? And I've always thought that these metropolises are really very much full of provincial people trying to pretend they're not provincial.
Mm, mhm, mhm.
So it's like it's not actually London hasn't got Londoners in it.
Sure. People from provinces. But still, I mean, with maybe your kind of controlling your own thoughts about your place, you did though undeniably attract and sort of operate at the center of the kind of larger Medway scene. And you in the late 70s and early 80s, you really sort of started to cut your teeth with the Pop Rivets, and then later on the milkshakes. You started your publishing company there, Hangman Books. You were also performing with the Medway Poets at that time, which were kind of a precursor to the Stuckists movement, and that's where you also met Tracy. So I guess do you how do you feel sort of operating at the center of that scene? And again, as you're saying, where locally it does not necessarily have an appeal, but to the greater audience, they're like when you search Medway sound on Spotify, your entire kind of circle starts to sort of emerge.
Yeah,
So
well, I think we just sort of like had some. I was very fortunate because in 1977, some local musicians noticed I was a punk rocker when there were no punk rockers, and asked me if I wanted to sing in their group, which I had no abilities or no. I always say that my qualification was having the right pair of trousers, and because I was in a group with these other people, and I spoke to Bruce, who was a guitarist. I said, "Well, why don't we write songs?"
mhm,
And I was always, and which we commenced to do. And then our bass player, Big Russ, had the idea we should make a record. He was the one who sort of like launched us into the idea of making our own records. And I was already doing fanzines and publishing Xerox stuff because I wanted to feel like the thing with punk rock felt that you could be involved, whereas before you wouldn't have been.
mhm,
So really, it grew from that, and I'm very project orientated. So what happened was is that I've got a lot of, I suppose I can be a catalyst for things.
mhm,
And that sounds rather grand, but really it would be like I always say to people, when I got home from school, the other kids would ask, what game shall we play?
yeah.
Because I'll think of something we'll play. And it might be something I saw on television the night before or read in a comic. And I wanted to be part of it or reenact it, like to be in Batman or to be fighting Japanese snipers or fighting the Second World War, and how we would do it and what film I'd seen or what book I'd read. And it carries on from there. So it's got this very innocent, simple motivation behind it. And I was very fortunate in the people that I met and encountered were inspired. A couple of my friends were inspired in the same way for the fact of what it was we were doing, not for the end effect.
Mhm, mhm,
Now, I did draw in a lot of people, and I've helped a lot of people who had a slightly different version of that, who wanted to have some of the energy, but with their eye on the prize.
mhm,
And we don't need to get involved too deeply into that. But it's totally, and I still have this happen. I have people who come to me and want to be in the stream,
mhm,
but
mhm,
really they're looking for the result, the end result. I
mhm,
mean, when my son paints with me or my other kid paints, they paint and work in the studio at the same time as me sometimes, and we like today. And one of the refrains I always said is when things aren't working with the painting, I would say, well, if you're looking for satisfaction, you're in the wrong game. Because the satisfaction has to be the process.
Mhm, mhm,
And with this and with the people that I've met that works with, um, I have to put that down to luck of meeting people who are on the same page. And is it's not something that can be manufactured. You can give advice or lead by some example of what you do, but uh, generally people are looking for the prize, not the process.
mhm,
And I'm not clever, or I'm not clever, and I don't have um, some great moral incentive within the way I work. Is it? I'm really lazy, and it's exactly what I'm like.
mhm,
So what happens is there's no effort required on my part.
mhm,
So so I don't have to. I don't have to compensate or stymie ambition, all those things, because it's not what I'm like.
mhm, mhm,
Now, I didn't create that, so I can't claim any that I've worked at that or used to want something
mhm,
and learn not to, which are some of my friends have had the experience of wanting to be successful in the worldly world
mhm,
and then learned to maybe value the process.
mhm.
But I never had to have that lesson because I happen to be like what I'm like,
Sure.
which of course is very annoying to some people and also questioned by many people as to whether that's really true. Like the other day, we were at the exhibition and I met this man who was in a group called the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah.
And I've never ever heard the Pet Shop Boys. I'm not interested in the Pet Shop Boys. My kid sung me some lyric by the Pet Shop Boys. I mean, it's not like we were introduced as fellow musicians,
Mhm,
and I explained that I wasn't a musician, I was anti-music. And then this was an art opening, and I said I'm also anti-art, as it happens.
mhm, mhm. But I guess
But
maybe.
obviously that's a little contentious. But really, I am a bit. I do have this sort of thing like uh, when people talk to me about art, I say I don't really get involved. I make paintings instead. I'm not really interested in art.
And but I think that sentiment is very has kind of followed you and for a very very long time, and you also sort of word it as amateurism, and you have a very deep investment in that kind of that process and the way that an amateur quote unquote
Yeah, but
might.
but don't forget, it's not an investment in the sense that it's what I'm like.
Mm, mm,
So you see, I don't. The most important thing that I could get across is there's no effort
mm, mm,
to be like what I'm like, and there's no effort to like make 150 albums. It's just a hobby that got out of control.
sure.
So I don't try to do anything.
Mm,
I mean, like people ask me when a painting's finished, and I say tea time.
sure. But still you do kind of refer to this amateurism as an
Well,
act.
I love the term amateur because I know nothing of languages, but I know it means to do something for the love.
And
And
that's
obviously, I've met lots of professionals, and lots of professionals are doing it to pay the mortgage. And that can be very noble, but
mm,
it puts a certain amount of pressure on the outcome.
and
So sometimes I think great advances I would suggest were done for love, not for professionalism.
and over your course of your career, have you ever maybe felt that love fluctuate? Has it ever gone dormant or sort of risen and fallen, or has it kind of remained very sort of consistent? Has it been a consistent?
I have to ignore it because it's sort of like I never look for it, I I in a way I have to I'm disciplined,
Mm,
which is the weird thing.
sure.
So I go in and paint, and when I go into paint, I'm meant to be painting, so I paint. So it's like, I mean, I must have some sort of like the kids say I've got what do you call it? ADHD. That and which is probable. So what happens is I have like I know if I go to the studio, I'm meant to be painting, so I
mm,
better paint something,
mm,
and then I choose something to paint, and I do it on the spot, and I don't have planning,
mm,
and I follow the painting and do what the painting requires. Because if I impose myself too strongly on the painting, I have a battle, and if I have a battle, I get unhappy.
mm, mm,
So it's like I don't look for inspiration as such, unless it's sort of like I think, what colour should I do today? I'll look at what Vincent did, or I'll look at what Edvard Munch did, or I'll look at Hodler, and we're looking at David Mill, and I think, what did those friends
mm,
from the past, who we're separated but not,
mm,
the people I admire, what 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 colour look good on a picture? And I
mm,
think I like that look of that colour. And I know that no matter what you copy, it will or what you copy will never be like what you're copying.
sure.
I know that much.
Mm,
Um, I always quote this, it might be a misquote, I always quote what I understand the Japanese for copy. There's no separate word for copy and learn.
mm, mm,
And all of the great painters and the people I like are copying. Like you really got me. And Ray Davis thinks he's writing Louis Louis,
mm, mm,
you know, and it's you can't go further away, but he's trying to do Louis Louis.
mm,
This is how you do it. You listen, you copy and emulate and align yourself with the energies of the universe that are comfortable with your disposition.
mm, mm,
And that's all that needs to happen. And then you need to let go and trust in those energies, and let the ego take a back seat.
mm,
um yeah, trust, just like it'll be okay. And I'm not perfectly good at that in my relationship to the world, but
mm,
I'm pretty good at that with my relationship to writing ditties,
mm, mm.
making pictures. you know it's sort of like very relaxed and easy, and I don't ever think of the audience.
Yes. And I was gonna ask about that, but since you've brought up, Munch and Van Gogh, I also maybe wanted to ask about some of your influences, the aforementioned two, but also Russian writers, blues musicians. I know that you practiced Taoism for a time, and also your
When
children.
I was 14.
Yeah,
When I was 14, which
but
is
no,
crazy. I don't know how that happened.
but it's so interesting to me that you kind of, you don't really, as you just said, you don't really kind of consider them influences, that you consider them friends. So I'm just curious
Yeah.
what your relationship to these friends sort of is, and how it kind of, shows up in your day to day when you're.
Well, I said, like with the kids, I said, like, say, well, maybe you should read this, and maybe you can find, because when you're out in the world, or you're going to school, or you're in our society, you might not meet people who are on your wavelength or the
Mhm.
same page. But through this miracle of printed work
Sure.
and recorded material, you can find people who are sort of like you're in tune with,
Mm-hmm.
who speak to you through their work, and you sort of think that must be a great thing. Like the reason we started doing Viper's Tongue Press, this little publication we do, is because when I was young, there used to be uh, uh, an organisation for the small presses, and there's this place where you could send some work and it might be printed, and someone somewhere might listen. And like for lonely souls who are sort of like scribbling in their bedsit, you sort of like think, well, it's really nice to uh, create or to put something out there, which is a space that they could maybe connect to,
mm,
that can be very important, especially I think for young men,
mm,
obviously young women as well, but particularly for angst-ridden young men. It can be a very nice thing that they think, well, there's a space somewhere where, if you're in Nova Scotia and you're scribbling away, and then some idiot in Chatham puts your poem in a collection, you think, hallelujah, I'm not totally alone. Or you go into the library and you read you read something by Knut Hamsun, and you think, oh, there's someone else who felt a bit like this, and you sort of like feel it can bring you into a little bit of connection in that sort of existential crisis of modern day life.
mm,
So I do consider them friends, and I say to the kids, you might find you'll find there's intelligence
mm,
there.
mm,
You
mhm,
know, like read, read 1984, and you sort of like we were listening to the news on the way on the we listened to Radio 3 on the way back on the way back from the studio, and the news came on about job gains and job losses.
mm,
This is the BBC News, and it sounded like just like Newspeak, you
mm,
know,
mm.
Newspeak. It sounded just like 1984 because there's the, and I said there's these great job losses, and I mean a great job gain, which I said double good, and then a really and counter, then followed by a great job loss somewhere else. And it's not like all of these things you say. So if
Yeah.
you listen to the news and you sort of like you can see what George was thinking when he wrote this book. 'Cause it's just ongoing. This sort of like this this game of wars and enemies and uh, cultural building culture and destroying culture, and people uh, believing the value of certain things that are cultural and dismissing other things that they think are non-cultural. When of course they're always wrong as well, which is really good. They're always they always got the wrong end of the stick, the contemporary. People asked me when I was a young man painting, uh, they asked me what contemporary art I liked. And I said there was nothing as dated as the contemporary.
Constantly in flux. But maybe to your you know to your painting when you were younger, I'm very curious, and painting when you were younger, and also your friends as you refer to them. I'm very curious about your relationship to John Lee Hooker and Howlin' Wolf, who I know that you listened to a lot when you were painting in the 80s and 90s. And every time I sort of, whether I'm listening to your music or I'm looking at your paintings or reading your poems, I cannot separate, the relationship between your work and the sort of themes that permeate throughout Mississippi Delta music and blues. So I'm curious maybe how those things have kind of.
Well, look, it's very, very simple, really. I was brought up from when I was about 3 years old, listening to first the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Kinks. And then when I was about 7 or 8, my brother bought Jimi Hendrix records home, and I listened to those. And then by the early 70s, glam music had started, which I didn't like. And I thought I'd missed the boat on what I thought was real music.
Mm,
And I started listening to a lot more early rock and roll. This was prior to the punk rock thing. And because I happened to be invited to be the singer in a group, I met some musicians who, um, like Big Russ, who was aware of John Lee Hooker and some blues music, and I'd heard of these people through Jimi Hendrix,
mm, mm,
and I felt very comfortable with that music and Bo Diddley, and so when punk rock was really stalling in the late 70s, and you had this resurgence of what I call glam music, like with New Romanticism, we just went backwards into rock and roll and blues, and we're listening to the listening to the people who influenced the people we liked. And I found that that was a really good road to follow in um, like when I was at St Martin's in 1980, Pete Doig gave me a copy of um, Charles Bukowski
Mhm.
book. And I read this Charles Bukowski book, and then Charles Bukowski mentioned who he liked.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I thought, well, I'm going to go and see who he liked. You know, the same as like I was brought up looking at painting a lot when I was young. And so I was well aware of Van Gogh and Munch by the time I was 7 or so. And and when I looked at their work, they mentioned Delacroix and Rembrandt. And so I was always following the person back who they were influenced by. And the same with Jimmy with Hooker and with the Chicago blues, and then back into the earlier country blues. So it was always so when I was painting these pictures in the early 80s, I had my record player and I needed noise in my head at the same time. So I just used to I just got every John Lee Hooker record I could, and I just painted to those at the same time. These days we paint to, you know, we paint to Radio 3,
Mhm.
and that's very haphazard because
Sure.
I tell you, afternoons, they play some shit. You know, they mock us. I hate modern classical music with a vengeance.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just you know, I really like things like if you get good Beethoven or Schubert or uh, who's the other guys? I can't pretend to know anything about, you know,
Sure.
Sibelius. I can't pretend to know much about classical music or recognize it. But when you hear beauty and harmony, and as you get older, and you see that like the the purpose of life is harmony. And it
Mhm.
doesn't mean there can't be disharmony within that harmony and looking for that balance, but everything is always looking to come back to balance.
Mhm.
That's what everything that a human instinctively wants.
Mhm.
Even if, like when we're young men, and you're still a young man, but when I was a young man, even if we're looking for balance in all the wrong places,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, humans are instinctively looking for harmony. And I
Mhm.
mean, uh, harmonious life
Mhm. And
and beauty as well, which people don't understand the value or the meaning of what beauty is. Because beauty is balance, that's all it is. It's just the opposite of disharmony.
Mhm.
You know, it's like uh, it's integration, not disintegration.
Mhm. Mhm.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean, of course, that disintegration doesn't happen all the time and integration come back round and there's a big, massive picture of it, but you're always looking for the integration. When I paint a picture, even if it's a very disharmonious picture, I'd be looking for the integration within that picture. Or when because you're obeying whatever whatever is in front of you with whatever the picture requires or whatever the music requires, you're there to serve it. So what you're doing is you're listening, even in the painting, you're listening to its requirement exactly the same as when you make a nice stew.
Sure.
You
Sure.
take you're continually tasting
Mhm.
and saying it needs sweet, it needs salt, and you're not trying to impose.
Mhm.
You're trying to listen continually.
Mhm.
And when you're listening continually, then of course you're in the flow and you're in the nature, you're aligning yourself with universal energy because you're trying to serve the greater good, even if it's just some shitty little picture or a silly little punk rock tune. You're
Mhm.
trying to give it the juice that you think it needs for it to be harmonious within itself.
mm, mm.
no matter how disharmonious it may be.
And to these points of, harmony and disharmony, I know that, you only paint on Mondays. And
Generally, yeah.
I'm curious though, I'm so fascinated by when artists sort of have a very strict routine, like David Lynch only eating the same thing for lunch for many years, or, the director of our photo program here, Gregory, he swims every day. And do you think that your like the knowledge that you're going to like have this routine laid out allows you to kind of, as you're saying, like listen or feel for that balance in the paintings more
No,
often?
I'd say it's just because we're psychologically messed up. And what happens is you have to bring some element, some discipline, some line into the thing to create the environment where you will get on and do something. And whether that, and those guys who want to do swimming or eat such and such, it's not because they're clever, it's because they're not. So
Mm,
what happens is you see if you were natural or if one was natural,
mm,
like I didn't have a television for 20 or 30 years and people thought it's discipline. But the reason I didn't have a television is because I would smash it if I did have one. And then I used to keep one in a box and only bring it out to watch a program I wanted to watch. And they said that was incredibly disciplined. I said, if I was disciplined, I wouldn't need to do that.
mm, mhm,
So
mhm,
you're creating an artificial situation. And I mean, humans live in a very, very artificial way. I mean, we're, the, you know, God knows what we are. Are we created? Are we created by God, or are we evolved from mice or amoebas? I mean, both are quite outlandish
sure.
as theories, but you can see that you know, our dog can drink from a puddle and run around on his bare feet on gravel with his soft pads and skid to a halt and be happy, and I can't do that, and that suggests to me that we're maybe we're alien mice, maybe. You know, we're sort of like we're out of we're fish out of water, humans, and as fish out of water, we probably the ones of us who are sort of like crazy enough to sort of like feel that we need to join in with the creation and make some poor representation of nature,
Mm, mm,
and, along with God, you know maybe we need to sort of like create an artificial environment for that to happen, be it going for a swim or eating eating a certain food on a certain day, or be it or only having three black corduroy suits. Who was that? Was that Debussy or Sarti? I think he only had three sets of clothes and they were all the same set. It's
mm.
either Sarti or Debussy, because we're mutants.
Mm, mhm.
But it's you're just trying to. The reason I do stuff is because I'm not very good at working in a supermarket,
Sure.
so I've got to do something.
And maybe to that point of doing something, as I said in my introduction, and your work has always been such a profound beacon of authenticity and truth to me. And as you're saying, artificial. Your work has never really been wrapped up in any type of cynicism or irony, and has always truly read as your own. And in an interview that you did with Artsy, you said that when you look at art these days, it's an intellectual game which tries to lead you to an opinion or a feeling. And do you feel that like this pervasive sense of cynicism and maybe over intellectualization has sort of ruined the art world, but maybe more importantly, like how do you feel as someone who really kind of defies these sort of contemporary norms? Like do you ever feel isolated, or I don't really see you as someone who concerned with fitting in or anything like that, but I'm just kind of curious about how you might be thinking about this
Well, I
sort of.
think, do I feel isolated? Not really, because the things that matter to me are my family and the things that are close to me and the my relationship between what I do and the people I I meet or work with or encounter. And with my galleries, they're done on handshake and generally on an understanding or like my Berlin gallery, they love me. So it's done on that sort of level. The I can't get too involved in what I think is fair or unfair
Mm,
because I do still have very much a the feeling of the distribution of praise is very, very unfair.
mm, mhm,
So I've got very like being at school and someone else gets the praise or someone else or you get the blame for what you didn't do. And
mm,
that sort of like I can really, really resonates with me, that type of thing. But I can't invest any energy in it,
mhm, mhm,
because and it doesn't I the reason I think I don't invest a lot of energy in it or can't really go along with it is I don't understand what other people are doing or why
mm,
generally. So you see, if I listen to how music is made and played, like I don't like the sound system.
mhm,
I don't like the record industry. I don't like the gigs.
mhm,
I don't like the sycophancy, the audience.
mhm,
I don't like the hype, you
mhm,
know. I don't like the sound
mhm,
mainly. I
mhm,
find the sound bad. I don't admire the I don't admire what inspires a person to do what they're doing generally,
mhm.
and I don't understand how they enjoy it.
Sure.
I don't understand how the audience enjoys it. I don't understand how the record company enjoys it. And then the same thing almost goes probably hand in hand with the art world.
Mm, mhm,
I don't, you so I can't really be jealous because I feel sorry that it looks so boring to me.
mhm,
Like when I look at conceptual work and I meet people and I meet, there's most of the artists, I mean, a lot of artists now pretending to be painters again, but they were conceptual a few years ago. And now they can't paint anyway because they've not practiced enough.
mhm,
But the when you look at the work, I feel sorry for them or bad for them because it looks really, really dull and really boring. And I just like so thankful that I don't have to do that
mhm,
or feel that I need to satisfy somebody else's requirement, a gallery or a museum's requirement to
mhm,
do that type of thing.
mhm,
So even though I sort of like might sort of like think, well, it's not fair I don't get an exhibition or it's not fair I don't get recognition, I've never ever once sort of like thought that I should change what I do to try and get it
mhm,
because I don't sort of like I don't understand it. It's totally alien to me. It's like the main thing is that I think it looks really, really boring to do it, and I've got very poor attention span, so I couldn't make myself do something that was so mind-numbingly sort of like boring and sterile.
And
It's beyond me. So in that case, I'm happy for them to have it and them to all be pleased as punch because I know they're wrong.
mm, mhm. But do you even in you're saying that you don't really you don't let it infiltrate your attention too much. But do you have like for these conceptual artists that you're speaking about and
It's a
this
very general thing to say,
sure, but do you
but
have
it's generally true. People always complain of speaking generalizations. That's because generalizations are generally true. The
but
specifics, it can disprove everything.
do you have a solution? Do you think?
No, there's no solution. The solution. the my advice to everybody is if you're in the gutter, fine, find a way to get out and always follow your star. And your star will tell you what it is if you listen.
Mm,
So when you're a kid, what you enjoyed doing, do it.
mm,
Don't try and fulfill somebody else's requirement to
mm,
please them.
mm,
Try and find out what pleases you or remember what pleases you. And I mean, it's not necessarily going to feed you or going to be the greatest success or going to be fulfilling,
mm.
but at least you'll be half interested in what it is.
And maybe to the sort of state now, as a fan, I guess I could say, um, I've noticed in your painting a very sort of slow kind of stylistic evolution in your work to an aesthetic that seems to be lighter in brushstroke, kind of invested in the larger landscape as a whole, and is maybe kind of, I don't know, more like attached to like a spiritual warmth. And as you said, you're not someone to wait for inspiration to hit. You're kind of, you show up and you go, and you're not really waiting on things. So I'm curious if you've noticed that shift at all, and maybe where it might be coming from, if there's one at
Well,
all.
I think it would be it's probably to do with doing something for a long time
Mhm.
and invest in time in exploring that and working with my own crazy mind
Mhm.
and moving towards that, yeah, a more mature view of things, a development that is not, but not a forced development, just something that, has been followed and you follow the thread of something. And it's not like a great sort of arrival or a contentment. And
Mhm.
often I feel quite constrained by how things smooth out. And like today, I was doing some things where every now and then I try and upset the apple cart a bit
Mhm.
because I get bored by, yeah, I was telling you that you have to follow the painting and follow what it wants. And sometimes I get really, really fed up with being dictated to by the picture because I'm just obeying the picture continually. And sometimes I like to put a spanner in the works.
Mhm.
And like today, like my kids looking to do art at school, and they're asking about what would be good artists to look at. And I suggested looking at David Milne from the Seven, the Canadian painter. And look, so they're looking at the pictures, and I see this again. And David Milne, at his best, had this sort of like really nice sort of easy easy way of working. And so I sort of like let that love of that work come to the fore again to
Mhm.
try and pull myself out of the torpor or whatever of stylistically creating the paintings, going down this stylistic, simple route
Mhm.
because you really want to freshen things up now and then, shock the system, like have a cold shower. And that's just to wake up a bit because and that's to make it more, on a real facile level, to make it more interesting to myself because I like to sort of like sometimes make pictures I like, and
Sure.
because I make a lot of pictures, I don't really know much about them, and I'm not really that sure. Uh, I'm not really looking for satisfaction, but sometimes I really, really crave some sort of satisfaction
Sure.
from not from just doing it, which I do get the satisfaction in that moment, but this thing of feeling like a false sense of achievement.
Sure. which is, it's funny you say that because I think, here at school, we're oftentimes on extremely tight deadlines, and the sort of time to maybe make something that you're very satisfied with is rare. I mean, at least to me. So,
Yeah, which is good. I tell you, you should not be looking for satisfaction. You should
but,
be trying to get some pictures done.
but I mean, we're all trying, but I'm curious. You have said that the art school is kind of an entity that sort of stifles creativity. And I'm wondering, with your son, being enrolled in school, you receiving an honorary doctorate. I'm curious if your outlook on the sort of academic, creative academic institution has changed at all, and how it kind of, how you feel about it now.
Um, well, I've taught in art schools before, and I did I did visiting lecturing at the Royal College for a little while. The students didn't mind what I said, but the tutors did.
Sure.
Because I'm always like, if the kids are in there and, you know, I think that I think education fails us time and time again. It's too goal orientated and too career orientated. And uh, you've got this dissembling of people by people who are not qualified to dissemble people who haven't achieved uh, a position of trust and confidence within themselves, not to start try and destroy their students. Because what happens, like when I've been in art schools, the students, like in painting, most of them were scared of painting. You couldn't see 1 ounce of who they said they were. I'd say to the kids, who was your favorite painter when you were a kid? They'd tell me. And I said, well, I don't see any of that in your work. They said, well, they told me to stop doing that when I got here.
Mm,
And I said, well, I said, you can see who Van Gogh liked at his last painting.
mm,
You know, he's copying all the time. He's immersing himself in a tradition. And by immersing yourself in a tradition and copying and learning from that, from multiple areas, you come to this thing like with Vincent, where you've got something that looks incredibly unique. But if it's with Gauguin, he's painting like with Gauguin. If it's with Pissarro, it's like Pissarro is trying to copy Delacroix. He's drawing like Millet. You look at Vincent's drawings, and they say how original and brilliant it is. He's just ripping off Millet all the time in his drawing style, and it's like, and then all of this stuff comes together, and you've got something which is uniquely Vincent
mm, mm,
because he honored what he honored the tradition,
mm,
he was like immersed himself in the practice of making making pictures that make the environment better.
mm, mm,
you know he immersed himself in the idea of beauty, I suppose,
mm,
like what unifies
mm.
people and uh, what makes the room better,
Sure.
you know, which is really sort of like, and sort of like with a lot of trust as well, a lot of trust in this will be okay. That was the unique or the brilliant moment of modernism for that little moment
Mm,
where you were free of the church, but it was still religious
sure.
painting.
Well,
And I mean, some of those grand old guys did it. If you really want to, like, we went round I'm not a museum person, but we went round the Louvre with the kids about 3 years ago.
mm,
And I usually go around museums the wrong way. And we went round backwards. But one of the things that I don't know if that's on purpose or just to avoid being in the crowd.
mm,
You were looking at stuff like Old Kingdom Egypt,
mm,
and you go from Old Kingdom Egypt, and it's downhill all the way after. It goes from people who knew who the, you look at this stuff, if these people had an idea of something and who they were, and then you go through and you go right through to the Greeks and everything. And the whole thing is descending
Mm,
all the virtually without a break all the way through. Because at some point, some people had some idea of strangers, some idea of who we are and what it meant.
mm,
It's like so immersing yourself in that or trying to join yourself with that stream,
mm.
you know, is probably the way to join yourself with some kind of universal truth, some sort of kingship. I don't know.
Yeah.
I probably know what I'm talking about.
Well, to these universal truths, I'm curious about what your I'm not sure how these two things kind of coalesce, so maybe you can help me out here. But I find that a lot of your work is entwined with universal truths and these experiences which you're talking about when you're looking at the Egyptians or the Greeks or Van Gogh. I have similar experiences with your work, and one of the things that I constantly draw from your paintings and your music and your poetry is just this overwhelming sense of vitality. You talk about, you paint the landscape. You often refer to the figures in your paintings as a sort of universal man of sorts, your swimmers, all that stuff. So I'm curious what your relationship to vitality might be in your work.
Hmm. I suppose it would be, there's no preconception in it. It's just that they are painted quickly in one go with because I'm I don't like I like to sneak up on myself and I don't really want to have too much control in there. I like the thing to have, I would say spontaneity rather than vitality, but maybe those can run in parallel or be the same thing. So it's the spontaneity of it would be the fun of doing it. That would be something I'd have to mention is like if I'm making music or working with people who are doing something, it has to be fun, has to be primary in it. I mean, it has to be fun to do because when I say fun, like better than not doing it, you
Sure.
know, when we're making records, it should be like when we're recording, we should be laughing at least half of the time.
Sure. And it's interesting too, you have this vast, as I said, interdisciplinary kind of yeah, process. But I kind of dwindle it down to you sort of work either as in individual pursuits like your poetry and your painting, but when it comes to the music, you're working in a sort of collaborative space. And when you're kind of working with one or the other, do you find that these shifts influence does the collaborative influence the individual, and does the individual ever end up influencing the collaborative, I guess?
Hmm. Uh, I just get bored doing one thing for a long time. And as far as the collaborative goes, I just got lucky with working with people who let me drive the car, and I've sometimes asked them to do the directions. I mean, actually, even in the paintings, my son's in the studio with me, and I'll often I'll ask him if the picture's finished. I'll ask him whether I should darken an area up,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll ask like I often ask the kids, what do you think of this? Um, should I do any more? Do you think I should do this other color? So, I'm quite open to discussing discussing stuff. And if I have trouble drawing sometimes, I'll ask my friends, they'll say, can you ever go drawing this? I can't draw it. It's like pretty easy going. So it's collaboration in those things. I'm always interested in other people's opinions when I'm working with them in any area. Like if they've got, oh, listen, even people I have people in the studio sometimes who I don't know, and I might ask them what they think I should do to something. I'm quite if it's a good idea, it's a good idea.
Well, we're past the hour mark here. I maybe
So,
want to open it up to some other questions from the audience if anyone has any. That'd be okay. Not sure.
anyone got any questions? Speak now or remain ever silent.
Oh,
That's it. That scare them off, you see, selling them.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Billy. Thank you so much for your talk. I'm Faye. I'm a second year painter. And I
Right.
wanted to ask about, you spoke about the energies of the universe and how you try to align yourself to that feeling. And I wondered if you could elaborate more on that and whether your paintings attempt to capture a kind of energy or whether through making them, you're conjuring that energy through the paint itself.
Oh, well, I think that I don't try to do anything. I just try to be I try to get the picture finished and moving in the direction that it wants to go. And it's it would be more to be in flow with
Mm,
energies, like um uh not battling too much. So
mm,
sometimes, once you get into a battle with a picture, I mean, it can look quite good and it can be worth doing it, but I'm quite lazy and I like to sort of, I, I don't like too much confrontation with, in life or with the painting. So really, it's disengaging from so much from my requirement. And
mm,
that's what I would describe as being in flow with it by sort of like not having too much of a, a preset idea of what direction the picture should go in. I made two paintings today, and um, the second one I was working on, I mean, I'm forever, and my son's the same when we're looking at pictures, I'm forever saying, well, this is a funny old painting. This
mm,
isn't what I expected it to be like or to do. Or I'm not, I didn't want to do this picture would be a very common thing for me to say.
mm,
And I might sort of say, well, I really like the bottom left-hand corner, or that bit seems to be working. I don't, so really it is like it's separate from me.
mm,
And I would like it, as I say, I would like to make pictures that I like and how I want them to be. That would be a lovely fantasy. But
mm,
what I do is I'm quite easy with it. If I'm doing interviews, if I have someone coming to interview me for music or writing or painting,
mm,
we invariably book it on a painting day, but I do my interviews when I'm working.
mm,
So, and I have people, sometimes I have several people in the studio when I work who come passing through or want to come in and see me and ask me questions about music or writing or doing a TV, even TV or newspaper review. And I quite like it because it distracts me from overthinking the answer and
mm,
it distracts me from over the answer to their question because I'm painting and it distracts me from painting. And so it's almost the opposite of what most people would like to be happening. So
mm,
what I'm trying to do is, if I'm trying to do something there, look, I'm not trying. What I'd be doing is the situation would mean that the thing would look after itself.
mm,
Yeah, it would look after itself. People have said to me sometimes when we're making music, they say, do you think it's punk rock enough? And I say, the punk rock will look after itself. We don't need to get involved. So it's a certain amount of trust, I suppose, and fluency, and
mm,
not too much expectation.
mm,
But the way to get to that is to do lots of life drawing and
mm,
hope that you don't become a slave to life drawing.
mm,
Trust that you won't become a slave to your abilities. One of my favorite quotes of Van Gogh is he said we should become the masters of technique to till people swear by all that's holy that we have no technique at all. Is that right, Huddy? Yeah, we have none, yeah. People swear that we have none. So master of technique to people swear you have none. That would be in the flow, wouldn't it?
Mm.
Something like that. I mean, it could be true.
Are there any like sort of cues that or like sort of things that happen that sort of like signify that you are kind of connecting or aligned or like a noise or a feeling
No, no,
or
it's like nothing, no
like
fireworks.
like a bell?
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, we need a power with the fireworks. That would be great. And then we'd know. What it is like discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah, painting without expectation, with some rigor, I suppose.
Mm.
Learning how to do something and then unlearning how to do it in public.
Mm.
Relaxed, just like a kid would paint, really, but maybe with some uh, like a kid painting, but with some technical requirement,
Mm.
which I think is good. Like learning how to draw is a really nice thing to do. So learn how to draw and then remember. My big mistake is I can draw okay, and then I've got to remember that I'm not really meant to be drawing with paint. It's good to be able to paint and not draw with paint, but I'm so like I'm a bit of a sucker for drawing with paint. And when people talk to me about art, I say leave art to the artists. I do paintings.
I feel like I'm always drawing with paint as well.
Yeah, yes. Well, actually, it's good. It can be really good with watercolors to do drawings with watercolors because that can get
Mm.
it's always handy to maybe lose some control.
Mm.
The thing not to be it's that is it, isn't it? It's that tightrope, really. It's that like control and no control.
Mm.
Like if we've been watching the darts players. My wife likes watching darts, and they're always talking with the darts when they've got to go get into a rhythm. They
Yeah.
have to go into their flow, and they're not to overthink. Or when they teach people how to use a pistol, which we don't do in England, maybe you guys do it over there. When they like if they for people who are firing a pistol, they say that
Mm.
like the way for accuracy would be like throwing a ball of paper into a waste paper basket. That's the
Mm.
aim. So it's like, you know, this sort
Mm.
of thing. And I imagine that would be somewhere what we're talking about, like or Zen archery, that type of thing. Where you're sort of like, yeah, you're letting let the gods do it, trust.
Mm.
And don't, and they're not going to send you any bells, and you're always going to be, and don't expect to be satisfied. And then you're
Mm.
fine. You see, if you're doing a picture, and you don't think it's got to be good, or you got to be satisfied, then
Mm.
you're off the hook. Yeah,
Mm.
let yourself off the hook. Yeah, make the picture, do it quick, turn it around the face wall, and don't look at it for another month,
Mm.
or never look at it again and do another one.
Mm.
Let the thing live.
Mhm.
Any other more questions,
There's an,
guys?
We've got loads.
you asked it your
Which
other.
one?
Yeah. Or
Read Delacroix, that would be good. Journals of Eugene Delacroix. You want to know about painting? Or
Yeah.
read Van Gogh's letters, and then it's all in there.
mm,
Delacroix's letters.
Yeah, no, Vincent van Gogh's letters, Delacroix,
Okay.
the Journals of Eugene Delacroix,
Okay.
and look at Delacroix, look at Van Gogh.
I
Listen, even if you don't look and listen to what they say. Picasso says smart things about painting sometimes. Yeah.
I guess I had a question about like maybe like your relationship. It seems like you kind of have or like a sort of affinity towards old things and things that are maybe out of time. and I was wondering if that sort of, I guess, reflects a kind of philosophy or an idea of time that is like particular to you and your
Well, I think no time is a really good idea. I
yeah.
mean, that's like good thing with is good looking. Like if you read, good book to read would be Hunger by Knut Hamsun.
Sorry, what was that?
Hunger by Knut Hamsun. It's the first real modern novel, about
Okay.
1890. Knut, Knut Hamsun, and it's called Hunger. And if you read Hunger, you would never sort of like you can't tell, apart from a couple of references to horse and carts,
Mm,
you wouldn't know it wasn't written yesterday.
mm,
And if
Mm,
you look at Vincent's paintings, for instance, they're pretty timeless. They don't look like they were painted in the period he lived in.
mm,
He's very looking, I mean, he's obviously quite romantic in some element of what he does, but he's really looking, he's got a timeless element. And timeless is really, really a great thing to bring into any time.
mm,
Like there's a um, there's a term that the Maori, I mean the Aboriginals use, which is the every when.
mm,
And you see like something that's in the every when, so like I think you may have heard I said to someone earlier that there's nothing more sort of dated than the contemporary. When Damien Hirst was doing his work, friends of mine were really keen on Damien's work and said it really reflected who we are. And I
mm,
said, well, who needs to be reflected of it? We already know that. What about who we could be?
mm,
Like, and anything, if you look at anything in the history of art or music or writing, the thing that really personifies the time at the time it's done is usually toast. The
mm,
thing is usually visionary or no time. It transcends time, which would be what its strength was because it becomes intimately human, I suppose, and not requirement of fashion. There you go. Because don't forget looking at the old means that we're really talking about fashion, and of course, there's nothing really worse than trying to produce what you think people might want.
mm,
Because you're going to be so wrong. You really got to do what moves you and what interests you. Like I said to the chat fella, follow your star. The thing that inspired you or interested you, even if people say that you're copying or it's non-original. I mean, these are stupid terms because if you follow what you believe is of value and trust again in the flow and the gods or the universe doing what uh, being in line with things, it will give back in spades. It will supply what's required, and trust it's okay. Trying to pre-guess what the world wants or what would be relevant is a sure way to get it wrong. You just got to be true. I always say like original means the origin, doesn't it? And the origin isn't original. The origin's the origin. I
mm,
presume that's where an etymology of original. So the
mm,
original would be original would be origin. I
mm,
presume. I don't know. I'm not educated. But the original. I mean, the authentic.
mm,
Is it authentic to you? Do you authentically like the person you're influenced by? And if you serve that and the other things that are there, the universe will bring everything else in and the thing will sail along on its own,
mm.
hopefully.
mm.
Anyone else have any questions? Ask away.
I've got to watch I Claudius in a minute. We're doing about the fifth or sixth round of I Claudius for the young kid here.
Yeah. Then
Now that's another thing to watch is I Claudius. That'll tell you, you don't need the Game of Thrones, you got I Claudius.
maybe we can just stop it there.
Great.
Billy, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And it was so great talking to you today. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for your time and your enthusiasm and having the the time to get your soldiers in line and find out what I was doing and telling people about it.
All right. Yeah, least I could do. Thank you so much.
Okay, cheers.
All right. Bye now.
All right, have fun.
Thank you.